After about a year or so of this crazy treatment, Jay said to Dad, this has got to stop. And Dad was always, go along, get along, do your job, keep your nose down, and just work. Jay did that until it became unbearable. And Jay got on Scout and took off and rode off set.
Hello, I'm Rob Word. Welcome to a special A Word on Westerns, where we are honoring a dear friend for everybody who's out there watching. Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger. Yeah, we love him. And to help us honor him, we have somebody who was actually living with him. He's going to share some memories, some really deep, dark secrets. Well, not really. He was such a good guy. It's his daughter, Dawn Moore. Come on in, Dawn. Welcome.
I'll try to reveal only some dark secrets, not deep, dark secrets.
Well, it must have been exciting, but you came along later, after the show was already finished filming. Your dad did not make any more movies or TV shows after the show ended. Why was that?
He so fell in love with this character, and he said it from day one. It's funny, after I was doing some research, I came across an article in the LA Times from 1952. So he'd only been on the show for 2 years. And he said in that article, I would be honored to play this role the rest of my life. So he knew right away that it was something that really resonated with him. And he obviously was true to his word. 50 years later.
It's unusual, I think, for stars who become so identified with a role. Many times they resent it and they try to distance themselves from it. But your dad, it was the exact opposite. I think some of the Lone Ranger creed must have rubbed off on him.
I believe to have a friend, a man must be one. That all men are created equal, and everyone has the power and the right within themselves to help make this a greater world. And that God put the firewood on earth, but every man must gather and light it himself. I believe in being prepared physically, mentally, and morally, and to fight when necessary for that which is right. That this country of the people, by the people and for the people, shall live forever. And everything changes but the truth. And the truth alone lives on forever. I believe in my Creator, my country, and one thing for sure, my fellow man.
It's interesting. It was written as a Bible for the character, for the writers to always go back to in what would the Lone Ranger do? And they would go back to the creed as the template, right? And it's so timeless. I mean, it holds up today as if it was written yesterday, and it was written in 1933 by Franz Stryker. And it's pretty remarkable. But to want to rise above, just kind of improve yourself and latch on to a character who you know can better you, I think it's pretty special. And I think that the legacy of Dad doing that plays out.
Well, your dad really was special, but since the role started, the character was created, as you said, in 1933 on radio out of Chicago. The voice that was so identified with the Lone Ranger was created on the radio, and Brace Beemer's the most famous of the radio actors. He did it for years and years and years. But I've seen your dad in films prior to his being cast. He did great serials at Republic. How did he go about making his voice sound like the radio's Lone Ranger?
He actually talked into the corner of the second bedroom of their house. He would go home and practice. He already had a baritone voice to begin with. And he actually used his old prospector to answer the phone. This is the story I got told. He'd come home and talk into the corner to get his voice lower. The other interesting thing that I came up upon, which we've never talked about, George Trendle, who created the character intentionally with a mask over its face so that it could always change out the actors, right? That casting of that role was crucially important, that person really embody who the fans have been listening to on the radio for the last, 10 years? More, longer.
Well, longer.
Longer.
Almost 20 years.
Exactly. There is an actual memo from George Trendle to the producer, Jack Chertok, saying, if this fellow who looks handsome enough can't get his voice to match Brace Beamer's, he's out. So Dad almost got fired before the show even aired. This memo is from 1948.
When he went in for his audition, obviously they'd seen him in a mask in the Zorro serial. Had he then been rehearsing? Did he know it was going to be that difficult to match the voice?
I don't think that was, at the time, part of what he had to go in for. I mean, they wanted someone who was handsome, who was dashing, who could do the job, and that's another part of what's so different about those days, right? These guys, really the acting was kind of secondary. Can you fall off a rock? Can you jump on a horse? Can you do the work, right? And Dad had been a trapeze artist. He had great upper body strength. He had been a model. He knew how to pose. He knew how to hold himself. He was very gracious in how he moved and how he interacted with people. But at that interview, after Dad beat out 75 other actors, and Trendle asked him in the final interview, he said, Mr. Moore, would you like to be the Lone Ranger? My father turned to him and said, Mr. Trendle, I am the Lone Ranger.
And he is for all of us. Yeah. Let me ask about his aerialist work, because he was in such great shape throughout the Republic years at the serials, and then as the Lone Ranger, he was doing those great mounts on silver. How did he become an aerialist?
Dad and his family actually vacationed in Canada because they lived in Chicago. And his father was a very successful real estate developer. They had money. So they actually went away for the summers. And I have pictures of him as a young boy actually using the trees as apparatus to flip and climb and do what you would do on a trapeze. And he was this is so good. He was the captain of the apparatus club in high school. Of his high school yearbook that says he was the captain of the apparatus club.
These days, the captain of the apparatus club is like a problem.
Yeah, it'd be some whole other thing, I'm sure.
But it's a different era when your dad was growing up.
Or maybe not so much. It was just called something different.
So he became an aerialist?
Well, he was already doing that in high school, right? And then he became part of a troupe, the Flying Bears, B-E-H-R-S, because this gentleman's first name is escaping me.
I can see him dressing up like Dancing Bear and doing some aerialist tricks. But
no, the outfit was much sexier than that. One of those 1920s tank things, right, where all their shoulders are showing and it's a tank top. And they performed in the 1932 Chicago World's Fair. So, and as a catcher, you had to be the strongest guy on the troupe to catch.
How did he go from being an aerialist and a model to a star at Republic, where he was playing good guys and bad guys almost back and forth?
Well, that's a leap. From a model to a star. There is some work in between there.
To a working actor.
Okay. He was, here's the hilarious thing. It's no different today than it was then. His mother knew someone at Columbia. Right. He had a little inside help. So he was obviously incredibly handsome and was modeling for John Robert Powers in New York. So he'd moved from Chicago to New York to model and said, I want to go to Hollywood. I want to really, I want to give this a shot. So in 1938, he moved to Los Angeles and met someone at Columbia through his mother. Didn't get the job, was really not a good actor. Actually had a test at MGM, didn't get that job either.
But he looked great.
But he looked fantastic. And so he just really was a journeyman, just started working, at whatever job he could get, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And Republic Studios, of course, was, again, looking for people who could do the work, do the job. You had to even haul the lights and haul the cables and do all that stuff. The actors were not treated like the stars that they are now. They did everything. So that was part of why he got, and he was humble. He was happy to get anything. And he said, I'm just happy to work.
He started hanging out with people like Rand Brooks and Kirby Grant, too. I know Rand, who later was Lucky on the Hoppy movies, was a close friend of Clay's.
They were friends for over 60 years, and Rand was also Charles Hamilton in Gone with the Wind. And that was 1939, so that was right when they met. They were best buddies for their entire lives.
I know Rand did a couple of episodes of The Lone Ranger also.
Yeah.
Your dad, so he got the part and he was doing great. The fans loved him. The shows, I think they must have been shooting 3 episodes a week.
Simultaneously.
Whoa.
They were shooting
like
3.
a serial. We're doing all the interiors right now for 3 episodes. And now we're going to ride around, ride that way, ride this way. And they look like it, though. The shows look like that. That they were shot in 3 days,
please
but
say the
his
actors
charisma, he and Jay Silverheels, they were just so magical on screen that when the program premiered on ABC, which was a nascent network, at the bottom, it was their top-rated show. They were running it in prime time in 1949. Pretty amazing.
There was a time, actually, when it was the only show that was on all 3 networks. It
Simultaneously?
Was simultaneously.
How did that work?
NBC Radio, it was still on the radio, and CBS Morning, and then ABC Primetime.
Wow.
That's unheard of, right? An interesting little side story about how successful they were for the studio, but not the studio, for ABC, but also for the producer. And again, so keep in mind, this is the first Western written specifically for television.
Yeah, Hoppy had been on, but the Hoppies were just cut downs of the movies that William Boyd had purchased and put them on, and they were top rated too. Those were running, but the Lone Rangers were the very first new production.
Written, right, and Dad didn't even have a television when it premiered. He had to go to his neighbor's house to watch the show.
And I heard while he was there that their TV broke down.
There was all kinds of panic at the beginning because it wasn't working, and the rabbit ears, they're doing everything they can with the rabbit ears and tinkering with it, and it barely came on right before the show started. But yeah, he didn't even have a TV, but it just kind of gives you a little sense of, at the time, how infancy, it was in its infancy, but how the actors were not valued. So after a year or so of just this incredibly hard work and filming up at Iverson's and in Chatsworth and Bronson Canyon and in the heat and the dust and all this craziness, they were changing clothes behind trees. And they didn't have dressing rooms, and it was crazy. Finally, one day, Jay, who was incredibly dignified, and my father adored him, and very professional. And by the way, Jay was an established actor before he got the role of Tonto. He had been in Key Largo and many other movies. But after about a year or so of this crazy treatment, Jay said to Dad, this has got to stop. And Dad was always, go along, get along, do your job, keep your nose down, and just work. Jay did that until it became unbearable. And Jay got on Scout and took off and rode off set. Of course, it stopped production. And of course, everyone's angry, and everyone's thinking, what the hell's going on? Where'd Jay go, and why is he behaving like this? So Dad turned to the director and said, I'll go check on him and see what's going on. So Dad got on Silver, rode up, Jay's sitting up at the top of the hill, and Dad says, Jay, what's going on? And Jay says, we're not going to be treated like this anymore. We need dressing rooms. And they're not listening to us. And the only way they're going to listen to us is if we stop production. And my father said, Jay, it's kind of not right. You're costing the studio money, and it's not everybody else is being held up. And Jay said, I'm sorry, this is the only way we're going to be heard. And Dad said, you know what, you're right. And he stayed with him. And the two of them stayed on that mountaintop until the end of the day, shut the production down. What do you think was on set the next day?
Adios.
I want to thank you for watching A Word on Westerns, because we pay tribute to the people that a lot of us grew up loving. Those days are gone, but it's up to people like you and me to keep their memories alive. We hope to do that here, and we're so glad you joined us. So if you like it, click it, share it with your friends, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.